Hello, good evening to everyone. I invite you to this second lecture on rapid revision series. In this series, we are considering some important topics for revision purpose for the prelims, which is going to held next month. On India's economy side, as I mentioned last time also, the syllabus as defined in the by the UPSC is economic and social development, which is almost akin to sustainable development uh, agenda which we have adopted since 2002-3 onwards. Therefore, the topic which I have selected are those which are directly related to economic and social development of the country, particularly social development of the country. In this series, in the first lecture, I covered the poverty in India and inequality in India. We saw the trends in poverty and trends in equality in India over a period of time, which are directly impacting the inclusive growth of the country. In that series, second topic which I have chosen for discussion is the food security and public distribution system in India. This is also an important area which directly impact the economic and social development of the country. Therefore, I thought that this topic is important for discussion. The second reason for selection of the topic is that you are aware that in the pandemic period, the government announced Prime Minister Garib Kalyan project, under which one of the item was to provide the free food grains, 5 kg food grains, initially plus 1 kg pulses to around 82 crore people in the country, so that uh, they can mitigate certain adverse impact of the COVID-19 crisis. From 1st January this year, the scheme stands withdrawn. But benefits of the scheme are still continuing. And therefore, we need to understand how the government has been able to continue the benefits of the scheme, although the scheme itself is terminated from with effect from 1st January 2023. So, keeping all these latest development in this area, I thought that we should understand the issues relating to food security and public distribution system in India, which might fetch one or two questions in the prelim. But this is a very relevant and important topic. That's why this topic is being picked up for discussion. So when I pick up a topic, I go into the detail of the subject so that you understand the nuances of the topic in detail, and any kind of question if comes, you should be handled to uh, uh, handle the question keeping in view the material we are giving to you. The relevance of the topic is obviously drawn from the Sustainable Development Goals, and you see that goal number 2 is that end hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture. That is goal number 2. And hunger is very, very important, which is directly related to food security. And within this goal, the sub target which is set is by 2030, the all kinds of hunger to be reduced to zero. And the people should be ensured to have access to food all the time during the year, and particularly for those who belong to vulnerable groups like infants, like disabled persons, and the other such categories. And therefore, the basic objective of the SDG is to reduce the incidence of hunger throughout the world by 2030. The data which is uh, available today indicate that around the world, around 896 million people are chronically hunger due to extreme poverty, while 2.1 billion people lack the food security, and 10.6 million children dying of hunger every year. That is 29,000 children per day all over the world are dying just because of hunger. That's why this topic has become more relevant for the inclusive growth, because inclusiveness requires that the growth should be pro-poor and the benefits should be equitably shared. But here we see that a large chunk of the population is still deprived of the basic need of the food. That's why we decided that we should take up this topic for discussion, particularly with the special reference to India. But before we start the nuances of the food security in India, let's define what food security means. The food security or food insecurity is defined by various agencies over a period of time. For example, the Food and Agriculture Organization in 1983, they defined that food security is ensuring that all people at all times have both physical and economic access to basic food they need. Basic food they need. That is the FAO definition in 1983. The World Bank has slightly modified the definition, and they said that food security is access by all people at all times to enough food for an active and healthy life. Therefore, food is taken to make the life very active and healthy. That's why the the intake of food is related with the health of the people. But the the access to food may not be translated into the better health, because the if you have even if you have the access to food, but you don't have the other requisite conditions to convert the food into nutritional requirement of the body, then the access to food may not have any meaning. Meaning thereby that even if you are having the access to food, the food need to be biologically consumed by the body. Only then it will be converted into requisite energy required by the body to sustain. That's why the along with the access to food, the other necessary condition is that the people should have access to drinking water, access to sanitation, or access to other requirement health facilities, etc., so that they can convert the food into the nutritional requirement of the body without much problem. That's why in 1996, the World Food Summit Plan of Action, they defined the food security exists when all the people at all times have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food to meet their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. Therefore, the food security sometimes defined in a very broader sense. In a very broader sense, it is defined as. But when we normally talk the food security, we generally we generally concerned with the three important issues. That is the availability of food. Availability of food means food production within the country, or food imports, or the previous year's stock stored in government granaries. Means we have to ensure that adequate availability of food is available in the country. Besides the availability, the other important thing is the accessibility. Food is there, stored in the stocks or godowns of the government. If it is not accessible to the needy persons, then it has no value. That's why the accessibility means that food should be within the reach of the every person. We have to ensure that within the reach of every person, the food is accessible. Even if the food is accessible, but food is available at the unaffordable price, the the poor strata may not be able to buy the food. Therefore, we have to ensure that the food is available at the affordable price. And therefore, the three A's are important to ensure the food security in any part of the world. That is, ensuring availability of food, ensuring accessibility to the food, and ensuring that the food is available at affordable price. Unless these three uh, A's are ensured, it is very difficult to ensure the food security in any area or in any part of the world or in any country. And therefore, achieving the food security requires that these three pillars are sufficient and stable over a period of time. And that's why the food security is deals not only with the availability, it also ensures accessibility, it also ensures affordability. And therefore, the if you really want to ensure that everyone has food security or has access to food, these three pillars need to be satisfied. And that's why the whole issue in the food security system, we have to focus on these three areas. Therefore, the important part, therefore, here is that availability of food grains. It is the responsibility of the government to either produce or promote the domestic production so that the domestic production meets the rising demand of the population for meeting their dietary needs. Or if the domestic production is not enough, then they may import the food grains to ensure its adequate availability. Then, apart from the production, the government has to procure the food grains from the farmers and maintain them in the buffer stocks. And then through the buffer stocks, we operate a public distribution system to make the availability of food within the reach of the every person. That's why when we talk about the food security, particularly in case of India, we are concerned with two important aspects. One is public distribution system. The other is the buffer stock policy of the government. Therefore, as and when we talk about the food security, we need to talk about the public distribution system and the buffer stock policy of the government. So this is the definition we are using as far as India is concerned. Now, because as you know that India is obviously a kind of semi-federal kind of system where center is strong and the states are there, and center is transferring certain resources to the states as per the recommendations of the Finance Commission, and therefore there, as far as the food security is concerned, it is the joint responsibility of center and the state. But before we put into action the food security system in India, the role of central government and role of state governments have been clearly laid down so that there is no confusion in implementation of the food security policy of the government. Therefore, the role of central government is very clearly laid down that the ensuring the adequate availability of food at the macro level is the responsibility of the central government. Again, I'll repeat that role of the central government is ensuring the adequate availability of food at the macro level, at the national level, is the responsibility of the central government. And central government has to meet the demand of the states for food grains in their respective jurisdiction areas. And therefore, the central government either has to promote the domestic production or may have to import the food grains to meet the rising need of the states as far as their food grain demand is concerned. And therefore, the central government its major role is to ensure the availability of food grains. You are aware that the 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 government is implementing the MSP policy right from 1966 to ensure that the farmers grow the adequate food grains production, and uh, and through the MSP policy, government procure the food grains from the farmers and maintain the buffer stock. Maintain the buffer stock, and this is how the central government discharges its responsibility of adequate availability of the food grains. But the second important role of the central government is that the food grains are available at affordable price throughout the country. No matter you are living in which part of the country, the food grains made available to you through PDS system should be available at the same price. And therefore, the government has to announce the central issue price to ensure that the food grains which are procured by the central government from farmers and made available through states to throughout the country are available at uniform and affordable price. Therefore, the central government has to play two important roles. One is obviously relating to ensuring availability of the food grains, and second is ensuring that the food grains are available at affordable price. Therefore, the as I said in the previous slide, that the availability of food and affordability of food has to be ensured by the central government, and the state government's role is to ensure that the food grains which are made available to them are accessible to the people within their reach. And therefore, the state government has to put in place the elaborate arrangement of the system, fair price shop system, through which this PDS food grains is available to the people. And therefore, this is the responsibility of the state government to ensure the accessibility to the PDS food grains to all the population in their jurisdiction. And in that case, they have to organize the system of distribution right from the state level to the regional level to the district level and to the lower level in the form of fair price shops. The fair price shops are the shops through which the PDS food grains are made available to the people who need them. And this is the responsibility of the state government. This is the responsibility of the state government. Therefore, the actual delivery of the food grains to the people through PDS system is the responsibility of the state government. Assuming that everyone is covered under the PDS system, that the food system of food grains should be available to every person in the state. And therefore, if you look at the PDS system we have developed over a period of time, from 39 to 65, the PDS system was not in a very important phase, and therefore we thought that the the food grains production will take care of the rising need of the people. But in 1965, when we had to face a very acute food crisis in the country, and government had to import the huge food grains uh, from USA under their public law 480, and therefore to distribute these imported food grains throughout the country, the government has to reactivate the PDS system in the country. And therefore, from 1965 onwards, the government put into action the public distribution system in the country. And from 65 to 92, which was the phase two, when all the population of the country was covered under PDS system. It means everyone who is citizen of the country was entitled to get the subsidized food grains through the fair price shop system in the country. And therefore it was called the universal PDS system. Universal PDS system. Under this system, the central government has to motivate the farmers through their MSP policy to produce more and more food grains. Then ensuring the MSP through procurement policy, the government procured the food grains from the farmers. These uh, procured food grains are kept in the central government godowns, which are distributed to the states as per their requirement. As per their requirement. And therefore, in this case, the two important institutions which played very important role. One is the Food Corporation of India, which was set up in 1965-66 through FCI Act to implement the PDS system in the country. The second important institution which came into being was the Commission on Agriculture Costs and Prices. Earlier it was called Agriculture Price Commission, but subsequently it was renamed as Commission on Agriculture Costs and Prices. This Commission on Agriculture Costs and Prices, they recommend the minimum support price for various food grains in the country. And based on their recommendation, the government, that is Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs, they accept or they reject the CSEP's recommendations. The accepted recommendations are announced by the government and they became the government policy. And once the CSEP's recommendations are accepted by the government, then the MSP is announced. Once the MSP is announced, then the procurement agencies like FCI and the state procurement agencies, they procure from the farmers at the announced MSP. MSP provide the incentive to the farmers to produce more because MSP is normally set above the market equilibrium price. And that's why the farmers produce more of those crops which are procured by the government. And therefore their production rises. Government procures from the farmers at the MSP and supply these uh, food grains through the PDS system to the people. And here the uh, FCI plays very, very important role. FCI meet the demand of each state by by keeping the buffer stock in their godowns. So this is the system which we implemented till 92. Means from 65 to 92, the all the population was entitled to get the subsidized food, and therefore this phase was called the universal PDS system. So till 1992, PDS was general entitlement scheme for all the consumers without any specific target. But in 1992, our food grains production increased to a respectable level, and we also became we declared ourselves officially the exporters of the food grains. And therefore, the government realized that now it is not necessary to cover the whole population under the PDS system. And therefore, the PDS system was revamped, and the 1992 to 1997, a revamped public distribution system was launched by the government in 1992. Under this system, not all the areas of the countries are covered under the PDS system. Government identified the 1775 blocks which fall in the desert areas or drought-prone areas or some difficult areas where the accessibility to food grains is difficult. And therefore 1775 blocks were initially selected by the government to provide the subsidized food grains. But later on, government implemented the employment assurance schemes in some the desert areas or some DPAP areas, and therefore 671 blocks where the employment assurance scheme was implemented by the government were also added to the 1775 blocks for coverage under PDS system. Therefore, from 1992 to 1997, the 2,446 blocks were covered under the PDS system, This is around out of 5,000 blocks, the half of the blocks were covered under PDS system and remaining blocks were outside the PDS system. Means that in the remaining blocks, the people have to buy the food grains from the open market. And it is only in these blocks the food grains will be provided at the subsidized prices through PDS system. And therefore, the dual kind of system was introduced by the government under the revamped PDS system. But this system could not run successfully. Why? Because if in a particular district, suppose out of 10 blocks, 4 blocks are covered under the PDS system and the 6 blocks are not covered in the PDS system, then the fair price shop owners who are working in the PDS blocks, they have incentive to black market and pilferage the food grains from the PDS blocks to non-PDS blocks. Because in non-PDS blocks, the food grains are sold at the open market prices. In PDS blocks, the food grains are sold at the PDS prices. And therefore, all over the country, the black marketing and pilferage started as far as the food grains are concerned. And therefore, the state government submitted the memorandum to the central government that it is very difficult to implement the revamped PDS system in which only selected blocks are selected by the government for providing access to PDS food grains. As a result, the government started rethinking the further revision of the PDS system, and therefore the phase 4 was started in 1997 to 2013. Under this phase, we allow the PDS system to universally applicable in all the 5,000 or 6,000 blocks of the country. But within the block or within the district, whole of the population is not covered. And therefore, in each district of the country, the state government has to identify the poor families which were to be covered under the PDS system and whom we can provide the subsidized PDS food grains. That's why the new role is assigned to the state governments under the targeted PDS system. The new role is, besides ensuring the accessibility to food grains, now the state governments also have to identify whom should be covered under the PDS and whom should not be covered under the PDS. And therefore, the targeted beneficiaries need to be identified by the state governments. And therefore, under the TPDS system, the beneficiaries are divided into two categories: those who are below the poverty line, that is BPL families, and those who are above the poverty line. Because at that point of time, we didn't have any other criteria to identify the poor people. Therefore, the BPL line, as identified by the Electoral Committee of the Planning Commission, the state-wise BPL line were available to us from 93-94 onwards. And therefore, based on the 93-94 below poverty line defined for each state, the states were to conduct the BPL surveys in their states and find out how many families or people are below the poverty line which is defined for that particular state. And once the households and people are identified who are below the poverty line, they became the targeted beneficiaries under the PDS system. Therefore, from 1997 onwards, the state government has to discharge two responsibilities. One is ensuring the accessibility of the food grains within the reach of the people, and secondly, the identifying the beneficiaries for the PDS system. Means they have to identify the families and the people who are below the poverty line, and they should have the access to the subsidize the food grains under PDS. And therefore, these two responsibilities have to be discharged by the states. And therefore, 1997, till 2013, state were discharging these responsibilities. As I said, that given the state-wise poverty line, as and when they are revised, the state government has to conduct the BPL surveys in their states to find out how many people are there who are not able to earn the minimum level of income as defined by the state poverty line. And then they will be identified as a targeted beneficiaries under the PDS system. But in 2000, NSSO National Sample Survey conducted a survey in 2000, and they find that even if the BPL system is implemented, the poor families are identified under the system and they are provided subsidized food grains. The survey found that still the 5% of the total population in the country is such that which is sleeping in the night without any food. And therefore, the TPDS system, targeted PDS system, should focus on these population who is not even able to afford to have the access to food grains even at the subsidized price. And therefore, these are the people who are the poorest among the poor families. These were the people who are poorest among the poor families. You see that everyone is poor. I just explained to you what does it mean. Suppose this is the poverty line. This is the poverty line we defined. Poverty line is defined, and so this is the poverty line defined in a particular state. The poverty line is defined. So this is the minimum income one has to earn to be above the poverty line. And those who are not able to earn this much level of income are below this. Under this poverty line, one person is very near to the poverty line. Suppose poverty line is say the 447 as per the Tendulkar committee, and somebody is earning the 430 rupees. He is very near to poverty line, and somebody is earning only 50 rupees per month. He is the person who is earning 50 rupees per month may not be able to afford the PDS food grains at the prices they are offered, and that's why they are still suffering. They are still suffering from the hunger, and therefore they are sleeping without food. Therefore, the survey highlighted the fact that the government should take care of these people who are poorest among the poor. Everyone is poor below the poverty line. The person who is earning 430 rupees per month is also poor. But the person who is earning only 50 rupees per month is the poorest among the poor. And therefore, these are the people who are unable to have the access to the food grains, even at the PDS prices. And therefore, they have to be given the special attention. And once the survey was out, then in December 2000, the government came out with a new scheme that is called Antyodaya Ann Yojana. This is a very, very important scheme. Antyodaya Ann Yojana. Under this Antyodaya Ann Yojana, all those families which belong to this category of poorest of the poor families are expected to be covered. Are expected to be covered. How will they be covered? The criteria for identifying the Antyodaya Ann Yojana families, now we shortly call as AY families. To identify the AY families, the criteria is developed by the central government and circulated to all the states. And they also give the ceiling of the total number of families which may be selected under AAY. And therefore, each state applied that criteria and selected the AAY families under their states. These families to be given the special attention under the PDS system. And these families were to be given the food grains, even the least price possible to them. And therefore, in 2000, the prices set for Antyodaya Ann Yojana families was rupees 3 per kg for rice, rupees 2 per kg for wheat, and rupees 1 per kg for other coarse grains. This was the price set for the Antyodaya and Yojana families. And for other families, the central issue price is announced by the government from time to time. And this system prevailed till 2013. In 2013, therefore, till 2013, we were having the dual price system in the in the PDS system. The dual price system was prevailing. Somewhere I have made the table. Yes, you see, this is the dual price system was prevailing. For BPL families, the rice was made available at the price of 5.65. AY families, it was at 3 rupees. Wheat, which was made available to uh, BPL families at rupees 4.15. For AY families, it was 2 rupees. And other grains, it was 3 rupees for BPL families and 1 rupee for AY families. But some of the states have also raised the issue about the APL families. They said that okay, you have taken care of those who are below the just below the poverty line. But suppose somebody is earning say 460 rupees, he is above the poverty line, but his economic situation, his financial position is as bad as the person who is earning 430 rupees. Therefore, some states have asked the central government to cover some of the APL families also to ensure the accessibility of subsidized food to them. But central government said it is subject to the availability of food grains. It is not mandatory, but if the state government wants, they can cover the APL families which are just above the poverty line. But for them, the prices have to be set, which should be half of the MSP announced by the government. They should not be given the food at the price at which the food is accessible to BPL families and AY families. This should be made available at the price which should be half of the MSP announced by the government. Therefore, the APL is also covered, BPL is also covered, AY is also covered. Three categories were there, but APL was not a mandatory category. APL was to be included only subject to the availability of the excessive food grains. If food grains are not available in the excessive uh, quantity, then the first priority to be given to AY, second priority given to the BPL families. Thereafter, if something is left, only then APL will be covered, otherwise APL will not be covered. And this discretion was given to the states. Therefore, from 1997 till 2013, we run the PDS system that is called TPDS, where the subsidized food grains was available only to the families, targeted families which were to be identified by the state government by adopting the well-established criteria. And thereafter, these beneficiaries will be covered under PDS system as the case described here. But in 2013, a major change has happened. And major change happened was that the Parliament enacted National Food Security Act 2013. Of course, the campaign was going on for quite some time. That is, right to food should be the fundamental right of the people, and therefore, in 2013, the Parliament enacted the National Food Security Act 2013. Under the Act, the the targeted PDS system to deliver the food grains as legal entitlements. Now, prior to 2013, it was only a welfare type of program. Government was ensuring the food grains at the affordable price to to all the targeted families. But after 2013, when Act was enacted, then all the beneficiaries under the Act now has a legal entitlement to have the food security. This is a major change which has happened after the enactment of National Food Security Act. And therefore, the after 2013, the major change which has happened was that the the any person can approach to the court of law if he is feeling the hunger problem, because under National Food Security Act, it is the responsibility of the state to ensure the availability of adequate food grains to the targeted population or who is feeling the hunger issue. And therefore, the under TPDS, the system initially was 10 kg of food grains was provided per BPL family, which are revised to 20 kg subsequently, and therefore the how much is entitled is keep changing over a period of time. The BPL population, as I said, in each state is identified based on the surveys conducted by the states according to the state-wise poverty line estimated by the Planning Commission, and based on that, we used to find out the number of families below the poverty line, and these families were provided access to food grains through the fair price shop level system, which has an elaborate arrangement of the fair price shops through which the food grains are made available to the people at the central issue price announced by the central government. Central issue price announced by the central government. It means whether you are living in the Mumbai or in the city area, or you are living in some inaccessible area, the food is accessible to you at the same price. The uniformity of price is maintained through the CIP, But once this system was put into the action, the entitlement of food was also revised. Entitlement of the food was also revised, and therefore the entitlement of the food became the the entitlement of the food is slightly changed in the PDS system and in the TPDS system. You see that the basic change which has happened after the National Food Security Act, that it has become legal status. Anti-poverty program with no legal backing in TPDS. But in this NFSA, it is a statutory backing, and therefore the right to food has become a statutory right. Coverage under the NFSA was also enhanced. Under the TPDS system, we were covering only the BPL families, or separately AY families within the BPL families. Essentially, we are covering the BPL families under TPDS. But in the National Food Security Act, the up to 75% of the rural population and 50% of the urban population is to be covered under the food security system. It means 75% of the rural population and 50% of the urban population to be covered. If you take the weighted average of the total population, we find that 67.5% of the population will be covered under the NFSA, And therefore, this is second change. Coverage has been expanded significantly under NFSA. And the third is categorization. In the TPDS system, we were covering the AY households and BPL families. And subject to availability of food grains, we were also covering APL families. But in NFSC system, we have only covering the AY families, and the other families are called priority households or excluded households. We have not defining the BPL families. We are defining the families other than the AY families are priority households. And the state governments were to develop the criteria for identifying the priority households in their respective jurisdiction. And therefore, the categorization has become different, coverage has become different, and the entitlement has become different. The other important is that role of center still continues to procure the food grains at the MSP and distribute it to the states as per their requirement through FCI. And the state will deliver the food grains to the requisite families through the FPS system. That was the system prevailing in the TPDS, and almost the same system was continued under the NFSA. Means under the NFSA, the PDS system is to work in accordance with the provisions of the Act. Earlier, there was no statutory backing, and therefore the TPDS system was working as per the executive orders of the government. But now the Act is there, and therefore the PDS system has to function according to the provisions of the Act. And therefore, the provisions of the Act is that the 75% of the rural population, 50% of the urban population need to be covered under the food security coverage of the country. And therefore, a weighted average turns out to be 67.5%. 67.5%. And at the state level, at the district level, the grievance monitoring committee should be set up by the state government to ensure that the all needy persons are getting the PDS food grains in time to them. Therefore, if you compare the TPDS provisions before and after the NFSA, you see the difference. In pre-NFSA phase, we were covering the 29.5% of the BPL population under the PDS system. Only 29.5%. You may just roughly call it 30% of the population was to be covered in the pre-NFSA phase under the PDS system. But in the post-NFSA phase, the 75% in the rural areas, 50% in the urban areas comes to around 81.3 crore people. 81.3 crore people to be covered under the PDS system. And therefore, the selection criteria under the pre-NFSA phase is BPL survey, and in the post-NFSA phase, the criteria to be developed by each state as per their requirement. The quantity of the rations given to them, APL family which were included in the PDS system in pre-NFSA phase, it was 15 kg depending on the availability. But in the NFSA phase, it is excluded. No APL family is to be covered. In the BPL families, in the pre-NFSA phase, the coverage was 35 kg. 35 kg means 7 kg per head, and in the family of 5 members, the 35 kg of food grains to be given to them at the PDS prices. In post-NFSA phase, in the BPL category, the per head requirement is reduced from 7 to 5 kg. And therefore, under the post-NFSA phase, the BPL, or we may call it a priority category, they will be getting 25 kg per household of 5 members. In AY families, no change in the status, and the status was the 35 kg in pre-NFSA and 35 kg in post-NFSA, irrespective to the size of the family. And in the pre-NFSA phase, the price charged for the PDS food grains were different for APL families, different for BPL families, and was different for AY families. 3 set of prices were prevailing in the pre-NFSA phase. But in the post-NFSA phase, the prices prevailing were uniform. That is, rice rupees 3 per kg, wheat rupees 2 per kg, and coarse grain rupees 1 per kg. And this was the system which was prevailing in the post-NFSA phase. Therefore, the After the post-NFSA phase, because of the huge coverage of the population under the PDS system, the subsidy burden of the government has increased significantly, because in the NFSA phase, we are only charging rupees 3, rupees 2, and rupees 1 from the population covered uniformly. But every time, every season, government is announcing the higher and higher MSP for the farmers, higher and higher MSP for the farmers. And therefore, to calculate the subsidy, the thumb rule was that the MSP plus the 25% of the MSP is taken as a incidental charges to cover the distribution cost, to cover the storage cost, or to cover any other statutory and non-statutory charges to be paid by the FCI is covered. And therefore, MSP into 1.25 will be the total cost, or total cost borne by the FCI in procuring the food grains. But the food grains was made available to the targeted families at the CIP. And CIP here is rupees 3, rupees 2, and rupees 1. And therefore, the subsidy per kg is calculated as the MSP into 1.25 minus CIP. And you see that in the table, the subsidy is being calculated, and subsidy for wheat turns out to be 18 rupees 31 paise per kg, and for rice 25 rupees 17 paise per kg. And therefore, the huge subsidy burden on the government has increased because of two reasons. One, the price at which the PDS food grains are made available is drastically reduced to rupees 3, rupees 2, and rupees 1. And on the other hand, MSP is announced every season with some increase to provide some motivation to the farmers to keep producing more and more food grains. And as a result, the difference is to be paid by the government as a subsidy. And subsidy burden has increased many times. I have some table in this PPT. Subsidy has increased many times during this period. The other important point which I wanted to highlight is that sometimes the problem comes in the implementation of the system is that most of the poor families or labor class, they migrate from the place of from their native place to the other areas in search of the employment. And therefore, if they move out from their native place, they are not able to get the subsidized food grains at the place of the work where they are working. Because under the old system, they have to register with some fair price shops. And wherever they are registered, they can get the subsidized food only at that shop by producing their ration card. The government issued the three-color ration card for BPL families, AY families, APL families earlier. But later on, only two types of ration cards are there for AYs and priority households. But they were to get the PTS food grains only at the shop they are registered with, and therefore the portability of the TPDS benefits were not available to the persons who migrated from their native place, and therefore the most of the people who are poor, they are deprived of their the entitled benefit under the PDS system. Therefore, to ensure this problem, the government came out with the scheme, One Nation, One Ration Card scheme. Under this scheme, no matter where you are entitled to get the subsidized food grains as per your entitlements. And therefore, under this scheme, the 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 whole distribution system is reformed by the government. Whole distribution system is reformed by the government after NFSA. And therefore, NFSA Section 12 says that it is the responsibility of the central and the state government to progressively undertake necessary reforms of the TPDS and ensure that the food grains are available at the doorstep of the people. And in this process, they have to computerize end-to-end system of the TPDs, right from the food grains when we start from FCA godowns till they are delivered to the beneficiary family or beneficiary person. The everything should be computerized. Only then we can introduce the one ration card, one nation scheme. And that's why the taking the advantage of Section 12, the central government issued the direction to introduce the end-to-end computerization of the PDS system. It means that the at the lowest level, all the digitization of records and databases, ration cards and beneficiaries, they should be seeded with the Aadhaar. Everyone is allotted his Aadhaar number and they should be seeded with Aadhaar. And therefore, the allocation orders up to the FPS level has to be computerized right from the district or regional level. Therefore, the first work was that the all ration cards to be seeded with the Aadhaar. The second was that the movement of the food grains right from the FCA go down till they are delivered at the FPS should be fully computerized so that at any stage any monitoring agency can find out where are we at a particular level. If there is any problem, that can be identified in the system and that can be rectified if it is end-to-end computerized. And this system was introduced by the government. And you see that over a period of time, the 100% digitization has been done of the ration card. They have been seeded with the Aadhaar, and seeding is done gradually by the states. This figure is of 2018, but so far almost all the ration cards are seeded with the Aadhaar, and almost all these systems at the FCI level, regional level, and district level, it is computerized. The only slow process is at the fair price shops, where the fair price shops are not fully computerized so far. And therefore, government is forcing them to to basically computerize within the time-bound manner. And once this has been done, the government was able to introduce the portability in the PDS system. And one nation, one ration card scheme was introduced. Under this scheme, the all beneficiaries which are identified under the system, they were given the smart card. The smart card is given to them, which is seeded with their Aadhaar and biometric signs, and therefore this this the database is created at the central level, and the e-point of sale machine is installed in all the fair price shops, and these point of sale machines are linked with the centralized database so that whenever a person comes to the fair price shop and when he gives his the smart card to the FPS manager and when he identified his biometric signs, then the whole data about that person will come on the computer screen so that now he is entitled or he can get the PDS food grains anywhere in the country if all the fair price shops are installed with the e-point of sale machines which are linked with the centralized database. And this was the system is generated by the government, and therefore this system was introduced. That is one nation, one ration card scheme. Under this system, it was easier now that the any person, no matter from where he is, he can get the entitled food grains, entitled food grains at any part of the country if he is having the smart food card, and therefore he can go to any fair price shop in the country can show his smart food card. The fair price manager shop will swipe the card and verify through his biometric sign. Then the whole data about that person will be on the screen, which will indicate how much he is entitled to and at what price he is entitled to. And therefore, that fair price shop manager has to provide the subsidized food grains to the person, and the at the back end the calculations are made and the food grains are transferred from one state to another state depending upon the surplus and deficiency of the people who are getting the food grains from other states. For example, say the 1 lakh people from Uttar Pradesh, they are getting the ration from Delhi in Delhi. Therefore, the Delhi will get the subsidized food grains of these 1 lakh people at the end of the year. From UP will transfer the so much food grains to Delhi. So therefore, at the back end, the transfer of food grains will start depending upon the calculation made by each state or how many people of the other state they are providing the PDS food grains. But the best advantage of this scheme is at least the people are entitled to food grains, no matter from where they are, no matter from which are their native place, wherever they are, they can get the entitled food grains. And therefore, this system was introduced in our country. And therefore, so far, as I said, that most of the states have already introduced this one nation, one ration card scheme, which has which has given the legal entitlement to all the people, in the country. And this is the reforms has been made under the Pradhan Mantri's Atmanirbharta Abhiyan. And under the Atmanirbharta Abhiyan, this important innovation has ensured the accessibility to food grains to all the eligible persons, no matter in which part of the country they are living with. And this is a very very important change in the PDS system we have introduced. But as I said that the PDS system will function smoothly only when the supply of food grains are enough and smoothly supplied to the states. And therefore, as I said that the 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 responsibility of ensuring the availability of the food grains lies with the central government. And therefore, central government has to ensure the availability of food grains to all these states. And therefore, to do that, the central government asks each state that in the beginning of the financial year, they indicate their estimated PDS requirement of food grains, and they give their estimated requirement to the central government. And based on the estimated requirement, the central government decide their the buffer stock policy, decide their how much buffer they have to maintain to meet the given demand of the states, meet the given demand of the states. And therefore the buffer stock policy has become an integral part of the PDS system. If buffer is not maintained, the price will violently fluctuate of the food grains in the market depending upon the excess demand or excess supply. And therefore, the buffer stock policy helps in ensuring the availability of food grains all the time during the year, and also help in maintaining the stability of prices in the market, and also help the farmers to look for exporting the food grains if they are produce the excess food grains. That's why this system worked well. And therefore the government, that is Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs, they fixes the minimum buffer norms based on the available trends. They fixes the minimum buffer norms on quarterly basis. That is on 1st April, 1st July, or 1st October, and 1st January. These are the 4 dates on which the central government announces the buffer to be maintained by the FCI. On these 4 dates, they have indicated minimum buffer to be maintained by the FCI. If actual food stock is less than that the minimum buffer announced by the central government, then the FCI has to intervene in the market, procure the more food grains from the farmers, and maintain the buffer as prescribed by the government buffer policy. And therefore, the government, keeping in view the rising demand from the states, keep changing the buffer norms. And therefore, the FCI has to maintain the buffer norms as prescribed by the government buffer stock policy. And therefore, the maintaining the buffer stock policy as prescribed by the government helps in running the food system very smoothly over a period of time. For example, the uh, the the last norms revised by the government was in 2015. Earlier norms were 2005. You see that in the first table we have mentioned the buffer norms we maintain by on 1st April, 1st July, 1st October, 1st January. And revised norms are slightly changed by the government, keeping in view the demand of the food grains at in the different time of the year. The demand is different. That's why the buffer is also maintained differently. Therefore, the revised norms are uh, uh, given by the central government 2015, which is presently maintained. But if you look at the figures, the food grains maintained by the FCI is always much more than the the buffer prescribed by the central government. You see, for the July, in July, the 41.12 million tons buffer stock to be maintained by the FCI. But we gave the data 14, 15, 16, 17, or 19, and even after thereafter, the buffer stock maintained by the FCI has always been more than the minimum buffer prescribed by the central government. This has been mainly because of the fact that the government sometimes asked the FCI to procure the food grains more to provide some support to the farmers. And therefore, the buffer stock has never been a problem as far as the India is concerned. And system is being run this smoothly. System is being run very smoothly. Of course, there are certain problems in running the system in certain states because of the identification problem. For example, in Assam, because of the identification problem, it is not possible to provide the food security to all the immigrant people there. And therefore, this in some states problem arises because of the identification problem of the beneficiaries. Otherwise, in most of the states, the system is being run smoothly. Only implication of the system is that the government has to bear the huge burden of the subsidies. And you see that in the budget, it is more than 2 lakh crore rupees, which are earmarked by the government for meeting the food subsidy of the uh, of the people. And at the huge subsidy, the system is being run, and therefore the government is bearing the huge fiscal burden on account of the huge subsidy given under the NFSA. NFSA was enacted in 2013, but NFSA fixed the prices for next 3 years. After 2016, government was free to change the prices to be charged from the people for the PDS food grains, but government has not changed the prices, and prices still continues at rupees 3, at rupees 2, and at rupees 1 of the rice, wheat, and the other food grains. As a result, the subsidy burden keep on rising. Then the government set up a high-level committee to improve the efficiency of the FCI to reduce the cost of the distribution, and therefore so that the fiscal burden could be reduced to a certain extent. And therefore the under this system under this high level committee, they give certain recommendations. They give certain recommendations to the to the to the central government, which are accepted by the government. The first major recommendation was that presently what was happening prior to this committee's recommendation, that FCI was procuring from the farmers, and then FCI was distributing the food grains to the states, and from the state godowns it was going to the district level, and from district level it was going to the fair price shops. So therefore, the whole system is being repeated, because from a particular state, FCI first procure, then FCI allot to the state, then state agencies procure from the FCI godowns, and then they distribute to the district level, and from district level it is distributed to fair price shop level. That was the system was made earlier. This high level committee recommended that instead of the FCI procure from farmer directly, let the some major states be allowed to procure directly from the farmers at the MSP announced by the government. Instead of FCI intervening in the market, let the state government themselves enter into the market and procure from the farmers at the price at the MSP announced by the government. And therefore, the 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 cost may be reduced in this process. If the states are procuring directly from the farmers, then they have already estimated their own requirement, and they will keep the food grains which are required by them with themselves out of the procurement they have done. And if they have procured excess amount, they will transfer it to FCI. They will transfer to the FCI, and FCI will ask them that instead of us transferring this surplus amount to FCI godowns, they can transfer to the other deficit state nearby, which will be indicated by the FCI in due course of time. Therefore, in this system, the transportation cost and the cost of distribution can be reduced. Therefore, this major suggestion was given by the high level committee to reduce the cost of operations of the PDS system. And the government accepted this recommendation, and they asked the 10 major states to procure themselves directly from the farmers at the MSP announced by the central government. And they should not charge anything over and above, or should not give any bonus over and above the MSP. If they are giving the bonus over and above the MSP, they have to bear from their own budget. Government of India will not bear any expenses on account of any additional bonus given by the state to their farmers. One. Secondly, the commission which the procurement agencies will charge will be uniform throughout the state, and therefore it should not exceed 3%. It should not exceed 3% of the MSP. This is the commission the procurement agencies can charge to meet their own expenses. And therefore, under these conditions, the recommendation of the high level committee was accepted by the government, and the major states are allowed to directly procure from the farmers. And after keeping their estimated requirement, they can indicate the surplus amount to the FCI, and FCI will ask the deficit state to procure so much food grains from the particular state godowns. And therefore, in this way, the transportation model was developed to reduce the transportation and distribution cost. This will help in reducing the subsidy burden of the country. This was the first major recommendation which was accepted by the central government. The second important recommendation given by the high level committee was the negotiable warehouse receipt system. Under this system, the government the problem was that at the harvesting time, all the farmers they come to the mandis to sell their produce, and therefore the glut situation arises at the mandis, and farmers were forced to sell their produce at the price less than the MSP, less than the MSP. And therefore, to address this problem, the high level committee suggested that the negotiable warehouse receipt system may be introduced. Under this system, the farmers may be asked to not to rush to the mandi to sell their produce. They may keep their produce with the godowns who are registered with the Warehousing Development Regulatory Authority or with the FCI. Those who are registered with the authorized agencies, the list is published, and these private godowns are allowed to keep the food grains of the farmers in their stock, and they will issue a receipt which will indicate the total amount of stock kept by the farmer with the stockist and multiplied by the MSP, and this is the total value of the food grains the particular farmer has kept with the godown. And this receipt is called the negotiable instrument, because Ministry of Finance issued the circular that such receipt will be treated as a negotiable instrument. Means against these receipts, the banks are authorized to give up to 80 to 90% loan to the farmers. Therefore, the farmers can go to the bank and take the loan from the bank up to 80% or 90% of the value of the receipt. Suppose in the receipt they have indicated 10 lakh rupees value of food grains is kept in the godown. Then they can go to the bank. Bank will mortgage that receipt and give up to 80% or 90% of loan to the farmer, so that he can meet its immediate financial need, and the produce is kept in the godown. Now, as and when the market stabilized after the glut situation and price of the produce is started improving in the market, they can withdraw from the godowns and sell it off in the market under the overall guidance of the godown owner. And once they sold off in the market at the better price, they can refund the loan of the bank. If they refund the loan of the bank within period of 1 year, then they can also get the advantage of interest subvention scheme, under which 3% interest subsidy may be given to the farmers. And therefore, the farmers can meet their financial requirement against after taking a loan against the warehouse receipt system, and can sell the produce at subsequent date when the price system improves in the market. And therefore, it is not the rush at the mandi, and therefore at the mandi also the price system improves. When there is supply is restricted, then price system improves at the mandi level also. This was very good system suggested by the high level committee, and this system was accepted as a major recommendation of the committee, and government implemented selectively in certain parts of the country. This recommendation was implemented, particularly in case of oil seeds and pulses. This system was implemented by the government. The another important recommendation made by the government was by the committee was regarding the MSP policy, because the MSP is announced for 24 commodities, but the FCI and the other procurement agencies are only procuring the wheat and rice to meet the requirement of the PDS system. That's why we have a skewed incentive structure in favor of the wheat and rice. And as a result, in western part of the country, particularly in Punjab, Haryana, Western UP, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, in the most of the areas the farmers are growing only wheat and rice, because the Food Corporation of India and the state procurement agencies, they are procuring only wheat and rice from the farmers at the MSP, and therefore MSP led to the skewed system of cropping pattern. And therefore the committee recommends that the pulses and oil seeds deserve the priority and government should introduce a system to ensure the better price support operations for these pulses and oilseeds. And therefore, the committee recommends that the MSP policy should be should be dovetailed with the trade policy, so that in case of the pulses and oilseeds, the landed price of pulses and oilseeds should not fall below the MSP. If the imported pulses and imported oilseeds, if they are sold in the domestic market at the price below the MSP, then obviously the farmers in India who are producing the pulses and oilseeds are bound to suffer. Therefore, the committee recommends that to ensure that the pulses and oilseed imported prices do not fall below the MSP, the MSP policy should be dovetailed and linked with the with the trade policy of the country, and this need to be ensured. And therefore, the government has running the PDS system successfully even after the NFSA Act. Only thing is that the burden on the government has increased many times after the NFSA in the form of subsidies, in the form of subsidies. And this is a system which we are running. Apart from this, what happened that after the pandemic crisis, when pandemic crisis came in March 2020, then the unusual, unprecedented situation has emerged, wherein most of the poor people they are started suffering on account of the loss of their jobs, and therefore they are not able to buy even the subsidized food grains in the areas of their employment. Their jobs are gone. And therefore, to help these poor people, the government announced Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan package. Under the package, the relief package was costing 1.7 lakh crore to the government. And under this package, 5 important components were there. One is obviously insurance cover of rupees 50 lakh per health worker fighting with the COVID-19 to be provided under the insurance scheme. That is part of the package. The second, which is shown in the yellow line, is important for us for this particular topic. That is, the 80 crore plus poor people will get 5 kg of wheat or rice as per their choice, and 1 kg of preferred pulses for free every month for the next 3 months. For the next 3 months. That was announced in March, April 20, and the scheme was announced initially for 3 months, but subsequently it was extended periodically, and the last extension is given up to December 2023, and therefore it is expanded over a period of time. The other important component of the PMGKP was the 20 crore women Jan Dhan account holders who get rupees 500 per month for the next 3 months. Similarly, the Manrega wages are increased by the government from 182 to rupees 202, so that those who are getting job under Manrega, their purchasing power increases. Similarly, ex gratia payment of rupees 1,000 to 3 crore people, to 3 crore poor senior citizens, poor widows, and poor disabled is given by the government under the package. So, under the package, various components are announced by the government. But as far as the food security is concerned, the important package was the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, under which the 80 crore plus people, around 82 crore people, will be given 5 kg of wheat or rice plus 1 kg of preferred pulses for free of cost. But the scheme was announced for 3 months only. For 3 months only. And therefore, initially it was announced for 3 months, but subsequently extended from April to November 20. April to November 20. The scheme was discontinued for 5 months from December 20 to April 21, and therefore restructured again and implemented from May 21. Implemented from May 21 under the restructured scheme of May 21, the pulses component was removed from the entitlement. Only provision was of the 5 kg of food grains to be given the free of cost to around 82 crore people. And therefore, in phase 3 to phase 5, it was extended many times from May 21 to March 22. And phase 6 started when it was extended from April 22 to September 22. And phase 7 started when it was extended from October 22 to December 22. It means even after pandemic was over, even after the risk of the pandemic and the fear of the pandemic and the impact of the pandemic on the poor people is gradually diluted over a period of time. But government continued to provide the free 5 kg food grains to the 82 crore people to, uh, under the scheme. For the financial 22 to 23, the consolidation phase is there. GDP is expected to grow at 7% per annum, and therefore government decided to terminate the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan, Pradhan Mantri the Garib Kalyan Yojana from January 23. It means this the scheme of PMGKAY is to discontinue from January 23. But at the same time, the government has decided to provide free ration to the 820 million poor, that is 82 crore people in the country under the National Food Security Act for one more year, that is up to December 23. Therefore, of course, the scheme is terminated. There is no scheme called Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana today. But the benefits given under the scheme are likely to continue under the, the targeted PDS system being run under the National Food Security Act. And therefore, under the National Food Security Act, 82 crore people will continue to get 5 kg of food grains free of cost up to December 23. Of course, not under PMGKAY, but under NFSA. Therefore, even if PMGKY is terminated by the government, but the benefits of this free 5 kg food grains is to continue under the National Food Security System. It means under the NFSA, apart from their entitlement, which they are getting under the NFSA, that is at the rate of 7 kg per person in case of the AY families and 5 kg per person in case of the priority households. Apart from this benefit, which is already being given under NFSA at the price of rupees 3, rupees 2, rupees 1. The over and above, these people also get 5 kg food grains free of cost under the NFSA, which was earlier given under Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana. That's why this program or this topic has become important. Of course, as on record, government has terminated this scheme, but government has shifted the benefits from the PMGKY to the NFSA, and therefore burden on the NFSA has almost doubled, and therefore since March 2020, the government has already spent 3,90,000 crores on running this scheme, and therefore to get uh, to ensure that the government is terminating the scheme, but government has allowed to continue to give this benefit which were given under PMGKY under NFSA. So under NFSA, we have to procure almost double of the amount from the farmers to meet NFSA its own requirement, that is the the 35 kg to AY families, 25 kg to priority households, and that to the 67% of the population. And over and above, the NFSA has also to bear the burden of providing the 5 kg of cereals per month to the people at the free of cost. And therefore, the NFSA is overburdened under the scheme. On record, scheme is terminated, but the benefits of the scheme are still continuing for one more year, starting from 1st January 23 to December 23. It will continue to be there. Therefore, the this is the system we are running. Therefore, we have an overburden as far as the fiscal burden is concerned. We have to provide the huge subsidy in terms of the food subsidy to run this kind of system where NFSA itself is giving a benefit to around 82 million people at the least price of 3 to 1. But over and above, the 5 kg of food grains is also given to them at the free of cost. And seems to be unwarranted. No economic criteria is able to justify this kind of continuation of this scheme. And that's why the question is whether it is necessary to run such a scheme purely on non-economic considerations, because it seems that the pandemic effect is over, the pandemic crisis is almost over, people have come back to their jobs. Of course, they may not be earning as much as they were earning earlier, but at least they are earning to meet their two-time meals. And in such a situation, is it necessary to provide such a huge subsidized food grains to the two-thirds of the population of the country? And this is a question which need to be responded by the government. Of course, it will reveal the fact that the extension of PMJKY in the form of the extended benefit under NFSA is obviously not on purely economic consideration. The other considerations are playing the more important role. And that's why the situation has reached to a point where the fiscal burden of subsidy is continuing to rise in the budget. And therefore, the Shanta Kumar committee, which examined the implementation of the NFSA, and they find that the covering of 67% of the population is not required to be covered under NFSA at the such a subsidized price of 3 to 1. It is not required. And therefore, the maximum population to be covered under NFSA as per the high level committee was only 40%. It means 27% of the population can be put outside the NFSA, and denying the subsidy to 27% or around 380 million people will save 66,000 crore annually to the government. 66,000 crore annually to the government. And therefore, for the remaining 440 million people, the committee felt that only persons under AY, that is 120 million, should be eligible to pay rupees 3, rupees 2, rupees 1 as the price for rice, wheat and coarse grains. And for the other persons, that is for those who are not belong to AY families, they should be asked to pay at least 50% of the MSP for the subsidized rice, subsidized wheat and the other coarse grains. If government do that, the 16,500 crores can be saved every year on account of this. Therefore, the government has to think and revise the food grain subsidy in the country. This is the issue which need to be addressed in this topic. So therefore, in this topic, I have covered 2-3 important aspects. I'll just repeat and summarize so that you can remember. The three important aspects which I have covered is that the running of the PDS system in our country, because we started with the definition of the food security, and as we concluded to the point that the food security has three important dimensions. Again, I'll repeat: the availability of the food, accessibility of the food to the every person, and affordability of the food by the people. Means the of course it is accessible, but at the affordable price, so that people can buy the food grains to meet their dietary needs. These the three A's are important to running a food security in any of the country. These three A's you have to always remember: availability of food, accessibility of food, and affordability of the food. These three A's are really very, very important. And as I said, that in our system, in our Indian system, as we have a kind of the semi-federal kind of system we have, and therefore it is a joint responsibility of the center and the state government to ensure the availability of food grains to everyone, so that by 2030 we can remove the hunger from the country. Nobody is sleeping without food by 2030. That is the SDG number two we have, and therefore the this goal is to be attained. And therefore, to attain this goal, the government has put into the action the National Food Security Act. Earlier, we were running the targeted PDS system as a welfare scheme of the government, as a welfare scheme of the government. From 65 till 2013, the PDS system was run by the government as a welfare oriented measure, under which the subsidized food grains is made available to the people, to the identified people by the state governments. And the availability of food, affordability of the food is to be ensured by the central government. The central government has to announce the central issue price, and they are also have to ensure the availability of food. Means central government cannot refuse to meet the demand put forward by the state to to meet the food demand of their people. The central government has to meet the demand of the states, and therefore the central government has to ensure adequacy of the buffer stock to meet any emergency need raised by the state to meet their the food need in their state. And that's why the important part of the food security system is the is the PDS system plus buffer stock system. PDS system is run jointly by the center and the state. Buffer stock policy is maintained by the central government. And central government, from time to time, keeping in view the increasing demand by the state, can change the buffer norms to be maintained by the FCI. FCI is the only central agency we have which is responsible for running the PDS system in the country. And FCI, on behalf of the central government, they procure from the farmers at the MSP announced by the government. And these procured food grains are kept in the godowns, which are distributed to the states as per their requirement. And the central issue price is also announced by the government, at which the states are supposed to supply the PDS food grains to the people. And therefore, the central government ensures the uniformity of the central issue price throughout the country. This was very, very important factor of running the smooth PDS system. If CIP is not the same, then obviously the movement of food grains will start from one state to another state in search of the black marketing and pilferages. That's why the CIP has to be uniform throughout the country, which is maintained by the central government. And no state government is allowed to charge more than the CIP announced by the government. And that's why the PDS food grains are available at the uniform price to all the identified citizens uh, throughout the country. And in this process, the role of the state government is to, if universal PDS is being implemented, that is all the families are covered under the PDS system as we did from 65 to 92, then the state government role is to put in place a system of fair price shop so that the accessibility of PDS food grains is available within the reach of the persons. And this is the important role of the state government has to play if the PDS system is universal. But if PDS system is not universal, and when we implemented the targeted PDS system from 1997 onwards, then the other responsibility of the state is to identify the beneficiaries who were to be given the subsidized food grains under this system. And therefore, under the targeted PDS system, the role of the state is also two. One is to put in place the elaborate FPS system throughout the state, so to ensure the accessibility, and also to identify the people who were to be given the subsidized food grains under PDS. And therefore, they have to issue the ration card to various categories of the people who will be covered under the PDS. And therefore, in many of the states, when the APL, BPL, and AY families were to be covered under TPDS system, the three-color ration card were issued by most of the states, so that by seeing the color of the ration card, we can identify the person belong to AY family, person belong to APL family, or person belong to BPL family. But this system continued only till the National Food Security Act was enacted. And once the National Food Security Act was enacted, then the category of beneficiaries are uh, are converted into two. That is AY families and the priority households. Priority household. We call them priority household because not only BPL families are to be covered, but some of the families who are not BPL are also to be covered. Why? Because NFSA put the ceiling, that is 75% of the rural population and 50% of the urban population need to be covered under NFSA. That's why the category called earlier BPL families is now called priority households. AY families continued as such in the NFSA also as it was being continuing under TPDS system. AY system has not changed. Entitlement of AY also has not changed. But the entitlement of the priority household has been slightly reduced. Earlier it was 7 kg per head. It was reduced to 5 kg per head under the priority household. APL category is excluded, is altogether excluded under the NFSA. So therefore, only two categories are there under the NFSA, that is the priority household and the AY families. And this continued, the system continued after NFSA is enacted. But various studies are conducted, which which I have not mentioned here. Various studies are conducted uh, throughout the country to see the efficiency of running of the PDS system after NFSA. And it was found that after the NFSA was enacted, the entitlement of many of the consumers have improved. Earlier, say you are entitled to get the 35 kg under AY, but they were not getting 35 kg, they were getting 30 kg, 28 kg, 31 kg on the one pretext of the other. There is a shortage of food grains, they will not give the full entitlement. But after the NFSC was enacted and it has become the legal entitlement, the 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 food grains given after NFSA has increased. It means purchase entitlement ratio has improved up to 99% after the NFSA was enacted. And prior to that, purchase entitlement ratio was maybe 70%, 80% in some of these states. Therefore, the major changes have taken place in the PDS system once it has got the statutory backing in the form of National Food Security Act. And therefore, under the National Food Security Act, the the entitlement of the people have increased. It has become a legal entitlement. Coverage has increased almost 2.5 times. Coverage has improved. Categories are reduced from three to two, and the role of center and the states are still, they remain the same. The center is responsible for ensuring availability and affordability, and the state is responsible for ensuring accessibility and also identifying the targeted beneficiaries. So this is the how we are running the PDS system over a period of time. In some other lecture, I may give you some figures which will indicate the rising burden of food subsidy on the government. And therefore, in 2021-22, most probably, the because food subsidy burden was rising, and government, on the other hand, wanted to fiscally consolidate their fiscal deficit. And what therefore government did was, government asked the Food Corporation of India to raise the loan from the market and pay to the state on account of food subsidy. So that the food subsidy burden is not clearly reflected in the budget. And therefore the fiscal deficit or revenue deficit were underestimated were underestimated in the budget, because the most of the fiscal food subsidy burden is transferred from the budget to the balance sheet of the FCI. Therefore, over a period of time, the FCI has overburdened with the debt, and therefore its credibility is reduced. And therefore, the many of the international agencies, including IMF, they asked the government to introduce the transparency in showing the fiscal parameters. And that's why in 21, what government had decided to take on all the subsidy burden from the balance sheet of the FCI on the government budget. And as a result, in 1 year, because of this transfer of the food subsidy burden from balance sheet of the FCI to the government budget, the fiscal deficit jumped to 9.4%. 9.4%. And therefore, the government once taken a decision to take on all the fiscal burden borne by the FCA earlier on the budget, so that it is transparently reflected in the fiscal parameters. So therefore, from 21 onwards, you will find that this fiscal deficit has been quite high, 9.4%. It has although coming down gradually, still it is very far away from the prescribed 3% fiscal deficit in the FRBM Act 2003. So therefore, it is because of the maneuvering or manipulations of the government in showing the food subsidy earlier, the fiscal deficit figures were suppressed. But once they have made it transparent, the fiscal deficit of the government jumped to 9% plus. And this is how the government is uh, trying to show the burden of the food subsidy in the budget. And the this is in when we'll do the fiscal consolidation of the lecture, I'll again explain to you how the fiscal deficit government is not able to maintain within the prescribed FRBM limits. In that, we will see that one of the reasons is this food subsidy is not truly reflected in the government budget till 2021, and all of a sudden government had decided to take on all the food subsidies on the budget, and therefore fiscal deficit has increased. This is one major change has occurred after the 21 onwards. And after 21 onwards, we are still not able to keep the fiscal deficit below the 4 or 5%. It is still very high. We are targeting to reach to 4.5% by 25-26. Still in the current year, it is 5.9%, which is budgeted by the government, which is still very high as compared to the FRBM prescribed 3%. But that we will consider when we will do the fiscal consolidation. The other important change, as I mentioned, which may come in the exam is the One Nation, One Ration Card scheme. This is also a very, very important scheme which government has introduced after NFSA. And now the portability is attached in the PDS system. The only thing is that all the beneficiaries to be given the smart card after identifying them, and smart card is containing all their details, and all the fair price shops in the country has to compulsorily install the electronic point of sale machine, and these are linked with the central database, and as a result all FPS are linked with the central database, and therefore the beneficiary can go to any of the shop to get the prescribed PDS food grains, and therefore the portability is attached, which has helped the poor people to migrate from their native place in search of employment, and at the same time to continue to get the benefit of the PDS food grains no matter where are they are employed and from which place they belong to. Now it doesn't matter when we have introduced the portability in the PDS system. So these are the few important points which I thought I should discuss with you for the prelim exam. In the next class, I'll take up the another important topic that is relating to unemployment in India. Unemployment is another burning topic as far as the prelim is concerned. Prelim is concerned. That I'll take up in the next class. I hope I'm able to clear most of the points to you as far as the food security is concerned, and what are the salient features of food security in our country, what is the role of the central government, what is the role of the state governments, and what reforms we have introduced over a period of time to make the PDS system more and more productive, efficient, and beneficial to the people. That's why the PDS system is very, very important. Because of the PDS system, we are able to reduce the poverty line also. Poverty line we are able to reduce because of the PDS system along with the high growth rate. If you remember that during the period 2004 to 2011-12, when the rate of growth was quite high and PDS system was implemented in the form of TPDS system, the poverty ratio declined significantly at the rate of 2.5% per annum. And therefore, the poverty ratio, which was around 37% in 2005, is reduced to 21.9% in 11-12. In 7-8 period, the poverty ratio is significantly declined. It was mainly on account of high rate of growth of income as well as the implementation of the TPDS system effectively throughout the country, and this has helped in reducing the poverty ratio. After the NFSA, still we are able to reduce the incidence of the malnutrition or undernutrition to certain extent. In many parts of the country, when this PDS system is implemented, it is linked with the Poshan Abhiyan. Poshan Abhiyan is the another flagship program of the government, under which along with the food grains, we wanted to ensure that all minimum nutrition requirements are reaching to the children of the age of 14 or less or 6 or less, because age of 6 or less are covered under ICDS and children up to 14 are covered under midday meal scheme. Under both these schemes, the target is that along with the the food grains and food, the some nutritional items are also provided to them, and therefore the food is fortified. The food given to the children, particularly below the age of 6, is fortified with some identified nutritions which normally considered to be deficient in the particular region. And therefore, to meet the nutritional deficiency in particular region, the PDS food grains are supplied to the children with the fortified nutrition. And for example, the zinc is added, the ferrous is added, somewhere calcium is added along with the food, which will meet the deficiency of these critical minerals in the body of the people, and uh, we can we can at least slow down the incidence of the malnourishment and undernourishment among the children. You are aware that in the global hunger index, our position is very, very low. Our position is very, very low. We are among the bottomers, not because we have a shortage of food grains, but because of the fact that the childrens in our country are grossly undernourished and malnourished, and therefore they are reflecting certain features which are essentially the reflection of the malnourishment. For example, the children uh, who are remain the short in the height, or who are stunted, and who are the person become very long but very thin. All these features of the children are indication of the undernourishment and malnourishment. Because of the high incidence of undernourishment and malnourishment under the age of 6 or below, our position in the global hunger index is quite bad. Therefore, along with the availability of food grains, it is necessary that the food grains should be fortified to meet the critical deficiency of minerals in the body of the children. This is what we are doing in the Poshan Abhiyan. So Poshan Abhiyan, along with the PDS system, which is being run in accordance with the provisions of the NFSA, we are addressing the problem of not only availability of the food, but also the the deficiency of the nutrition. This is the target we are trying to achieve in the near future and improve the status of the country as far as the food security and the status of nutrition, especially of the children, is concerned. I hope it is very clear to all of you. And the other things we will be discussing in the uh, other part of the presentation when we'll go to the other topic. Thank you very much for giving the patient hearing for this important topic on food security and